I am a mother of 3. My husband, Claude 60 and I both come from old money. Our families are very wealthy and have been for over a century. We had a lot in common when we first met in our teens. Each of us was an only child, and each of us kind of found the culture of our lives to be embarrassing and snobby. We didn't end up dating until our early 20s, but it was very much for love. Our parents all passed over a 10-year span when we were in our late 20s to mid-30s. As the only heirs to the estates of 2 prominent families, we became very, very wealthy with the combined inheritance. In addition, my husband has done very well managing the estates, investments, and businesses of our families for the last 30 years. Not being one to just sit around drinking tea and looking pretty, I got into the real estate market. Which I admit is something that is easier to do when you already have tons of disposable cash on hand. I now own numerous properties on the West Coast that turn nice profits. We instilled a lot of value towards hard work into our 3 children. We both agreed before we got married was, just because we are rich, doesn't mean we should be useless. Obviously, just like we were, our children were extremely privileged. However, we tried to mirror a typical childhood experience. They had chores, they were required to get jobs once they were teens. Yes, they had new expensive cars, yes they went to top private schools, but we did our best to make sure they didn't turn out like our friends. I put that in quotes because Claude and I always air quoted when we said friends while growing up. So many of them were beyond helpless. It was honestly sad, and needless to say many have gone from helpless to worthless as adults. Our oldest son Byron, 33M, has become a successful lawyer. He married his longtime girlfriend Ming about 4 years ago. Our middle child was our only daughter, Darcy, 30F. She is still single and has gone into a number of philanthropies that we are very proud of. Our youngest son, Damien 27M, is my concern in writing this. 7 years ago he met his now wife, Kylie, 27F, while he was in college. They have provided us our only grandchild, Grand, 2M. Unlike our older children that chose to go to traditional Ivy League schools, he elected to go to San Diego State University. This was fine, it was his choice. He has always been his own person. He was different from the other 2. They always seemed to embrace the expectations. Always very much fit the mold you expect of people born into this kind of life. Damien did not. He was quieter, yet sure of himself. I remember when he was very young he rarely ever cried for any reason. As he grew up it seemed like he was often the center of attention, yet he needed none of that. I often thought he could be just as happy in a room of his 10 closest friends or completely alone for a week. Damien went into a tech field, and now works as a software developer. He obviously wants for nothing with millions in his trust, but I find it refreshing that he lives the way he chooses to, and not by the degree someone of his status is expected. Kylie, for being a regular girl, has fit in very well with our family. I've always said Damien really lucked out with her. She is the most charming, kind woman. She always seems absolutely obsessed with Damien. They have so many common interests, and she is beautiful on top of that. Kylie never disappoints when with the family either. She takes a real interest in all of us and can't wait to dive into anything we have planned. She has been a very quick study at society events too, always impressing, which I know can be hard when you don't grow up in it. Our grandson is just the sweetest little boy and I love him so much. This is also what makes the news I received so hurtful. I recently had a friend visit me that I had not seen in person in a few years. It was really nice catching up, because the last time I saw her was nearly 4 years ago when she got divorced from her husband after 34 years of marriage. We didn't really talk about what happened then, but I do know that she had discovered her husband was a frequent customer of an escort service. During her visit with me we mostly just got caught up on our current lives, but towards the end of the visit the conversation did turn towards her ex-husband. There was definitely some lingering bitterness there. As she talked it turned to sadness. She expressed it's been really hard on her because she knows she never looked like the girls he was paying for. She had even found some of their pictures on her ex-husband's computer. She pulled her phone out, a few tears forming, and opened her photos. They were like advertisements. These were what the escort agency sent for clients to choose from. She scrolled through a few holding the phone so I could see. I didn't really want to see. As she was venting, saying, how was I supposed to compete with that? I was mostly trying to console my friend, one because I knew this had to be hard, but also because I knew she would be embarrassed having shown so much emotion. That was until I noticed the tattoo. I stopped my friend scrolling. There were only 3 or 4 pictures she had gone through. The girl in this picture looked exactly like Kylie, well at least like she looked when she was 20 to 21 years old. That would have been around the time her and Damien met, maybe their first year of dating. I could have rationalized the similar appearance. Sometimes people just look a lot alike. However, in the picture, you could just barely see part of the same Bulbasaur tattoo that Kylie has on her inner bicep. It has to be her, I'm sure of it. I don't want to ruin my son's marriage. Maybe he knows about this part of her past. I won't judge. I swore a long time ago that I wouldn't become one of those people. It's just that this photo could very well be from when they were dating, and I feel my son has a right to know. I do. I don't want him to get hurt if something comes out later. I think the best course is for me to do a little private detective work and figure out if this is all in the past, how far in the past, and to what extent. Then I can go to my son with all the information. I have found out so much disturbing information since I started digging into my son's marriage. I feel guilty for doing so, but what started out as just trying to confirm whether or not my daughter-in-law was an escort, has taken on a life of its own. I hired a private investigator to figure out if Kylie was still performing this kind of work. I had him follow her for 2 weeks and he reported back that she did not meet with any other men or women during that span of time, other than a girlfriend she had lunch with 2 or 3 times. There was nothing there, yet the PI had told me he expected there was going to be. The very first night after I hired him, he went to scope out their house. He said he was just making observations when he saw Kylie come out the door with Grand. She got into her car, and drove to a very nice townhouse in an affluent part of the city. The PI told me he was sure she was there to meet some older married man. He has seen this kind of thing play out this way numerous times. He watched for 2 days as Kylie and Grand stayed at this place. No one else came or went from the residence except the 2 of them. They went to a park and played on the playground, and went to get food twice. He said he was sure no one else was there. In the 2 weeks he observed her, 8 of the nights she stayed at this townhouse, and she spent all of each Monday there. I decided to look into this residence and discovered Kylie owns this place. It is her place, in her name alone. This has me somewhat alarmed as I am wondering if Damien and Kylie are having some sort of marital problems. I have doubts on that though, as it appears Kylie bought this place 4 years ago, 1 year after they got married and 2 years before they had Grand. Which leads me to my next glaring red flag. They are not legally married. They had a wedding, I was there. It was a big expensive wedding. They signed the standard prenup beforehand. The only thing that was different was instead of the family lawyer handling it, Damien hired a friend of his from high school. He was a young practicing attorney and Damien said it would be a big boon to his good friend if he got to handle a high-end client, so we didn't fight him on it. I did have our people take a look at the prenup, and they said it was pretty standard. How are they not married? My PI said it looks like they just never filed the paperwork. If they didn't want to be married, that was fine. We are not a religious family. No one would have judged, no one that mattered anyway. Why all this secrecy? That only fueled my desire to get to the bottom of this more. I hired some people that are good at finding things. It's not the first time I've done so in my lifetime, and I have the means. It may not be exactly legal, but the people I employ are very discreet and very professional. They were able to obtain Damien's financial records. I obviously had the ones that related to the estate, but they got his personal records as well as Kylie's taxes and income statements. Her taxes indicate that she made around $400,000 each of the last 3 years. She is a stay-at-home mom. Her tax statement lists her as a self-employed interior designer. I have never heard her mention being an interior designer. Also, within the records, there were 3 large money transfers over the last 6 years. 2 for $750K, and 1 for $500K. They go from his trust, to their joint account, to Kylie's personal account. With all of this I was suspicious enough to bring it to my husband Claude's attention. He has always been level-headed and understanding. I was very surprised when he told me to just drop it and stay out of their business. He even had a bit of a sharp tone when he told me this that caught me off guard. This got under my skin a bit and I bit back. Eventually he said to me, "Just stop. You don't know everything. What they do with their money is their business and what they choose to do in the privacy of their own lives is their business. They are all happy and so are we, there is no reason to rock the boat." I admit I got a little bit irrational here, as I knew he was hiding something from me. We fought a little bit more about it and I walked away from him. Upset I made a rash decision and drove over to Damien and Kylie's home intent on confronting them. They have a nice big house but nothing over the top. I let myself in the side door, which was a mistake. They didn't hear me come in and when I walked into the living area I saw Kylie cleaning the house, completely naked. Damien was sitting on the couch watching her, and enjoying the show. I screamed, "Oh my God!" They both freaked out as well. Damien quickly tried to cover up, and Kylie turned to head out the room, but before doing so, in a panicked voice asked Damien, "Should I cover up?" Which he quickly replied, "Yes, please do so, baby." Damien popped up rightfully agitated with me. He was heated until Kylie came back out in a robe. She smoothed everything over, even made a little joke about getting a sign that says, "Roleplay in progress," to hang on the door. I didn't say anything about what I learned. I was far too embarrassed. It was hours later when the whole scene began to cause me some suspicion. I don't care if they are being kinky. I may be 57 but I've done my share of kinky, and still do sometimes, so that is what it is. I just wish I hadn't walked in on it. What bothers me is what she said after I walked in. Why did she ask him if she could cover up? That seems obvious. What kind of dynamic do they have that she would need to ask in that situation? All of this has me going back and forth between what my husband said and what I feel I need to do. I tried to get it out of him again, but he said, Damien trusted him with this, and he asked me not to share it with you, to spare your feelings. I know Darcy has done the same with you over the years, especially when she was in high school and college. I never held that against you or asked you to betray her trust. I ask that you respect and trust me when it comes to this matter. I will do that, I will not press him, but that does not mean that I will not press our son for the truth. It took a couple weeks to actually get my son Damien alone and ask him what was going on with him and his wife. My husband was right. I should have just left it alone. It took some poking, it took me showing all the evidence I had acquired. Initially Damien thought that his father Claude had let it slip. I assured him that was not the case. Quite the opposite actually. Eventually he told me everything. Kylie is not a former escort. When he told me that I felt this relief wash over me. It was very short-lived. She is a current escort. She is his escort. Their entire relationship is just a business transaction. He pays her $177.15 an hour. The $500K transfer was a wedding bonus. Grand was what Damien bought for the $750,000 3 years ago. They sat down and negotiated the price of producing a grandchild. Damien wants a second child, which is what the most recent $750,000 is for. I'm sure I had the dumbest look on my face while he was telling me all this. I can't wrap my head around it, it's absolutely insane. It all makes sense though. Her income and tax filings. The townhouse she owns. The fact that she spends less than half the nights at their home. She's off the clock. I asked so many questions about their whole dynamic and Damien was surprisingly forthcoming. If she is there with him or at his house, she is on the clock. If she is doing anything with any part of the extended family, she is on the clock. Basically anytime she is pretending to be a member of our family she is on the clock. She gets to keep any gift she receives from anyone. Damien will keep their house as if they all live there full time. Basically food she likes will be on hand, she will have hygiene products there, etc. During the time she is on the clock she is available to him at any time. They make a 2-week schedule of when she will stay overnight. If he wants to change this and have her stay overnight on an unplanned evening he can request this but she has the option of refusal. This is just the regular everyday stuff. Vacations, family gatherings, and other special events are all assumed time in which Kylie will attend unless they are on unreasonably short notice. When it comes to Grand they both consider him their child and love him. They look at it like it's co-parenting. She has primary custody and is with him almost full time. They do employ a nanny as well for when they are both busy or Kylie needs a break. Damien assures me she sees Grand as her child and will never give up custody of him. I strangely believe this as everything I have ever seen is that she is a wonderful mother. I asked what will happen if their arrangement ends. Damien said, then we will continue on similar to amicably divorced parents who maintain a friendship. Neither of us wants him to be without both of his parents. There was so much more to it. I didn't get too much in the personal part because it was weird for both of us. He did answer the billion-dollar question. Why? It all started during his junior year of college. Damien was always popular. He keeps to himself but when you're rich and handsome you will attract attention. He told me he always dated, contrary to what everyone thinks about him, he does want to be with someone special. He told me every time he had a girlfriend, it would always come back to what he could give them. Every time he began to sense they were after something else. Which I know when you have the wealth that we do you always attract this type of person. Then, a friend put him on to the escort service. They were very discreet. That is how he met Kylie. Kylie apparently offered something called a girlfriend experience. I guess normally there are a lot of rules surrounding what you can and can't do with an escort. When you pay for the girlfriend experience, you get the treatment a regular boyfriend might get. I kind of regret asking what that meant, but essentially unprotected sex, kissing, deep conversations, etc. I did ask if he got tested, and he told me they both did before starting that initial arrangement. After about a month of this Damien said he was really enjoying their relationship. He offered her the deal. Which was to make the girlfriend experience a full-time job. He agreed to the term of $100 an hour back then, that would increase each year that they kept the arrangement going. He would provide for all necessities and accommodations during their time together. She would be available as much as possible and accompany him to family functions, work events, etc. He told me she is very professional and puts in the effort to learn how to interact with our socio-economic class. When I asked about the major life events, he just told me he wanted to get married and have kids, she was willing to do this for the appropriate price. He knows they aren't legally married but he got to have the wedding he always wanted, and said it was nice because for once he got to be the first kid to reach a milestone. He likes their relationship. Damien said, it's amazing, everyone gets what they want. I got the marriage I always wanted without all the drama and turmoil that comes with it. She is the perfect partner every hour of every day. She has been a part of our lives for 7 years. I just can't believe this whole time it was just a job. I am heading out now to have a real conversation with Kylie about all of this. My son made her aware of my knowledge in this matter. I'm hoping to see the real Kylie during this conversation and not just the perfect daughter-in-law part that she plays. I've been with my partner for 3 years, and up until a week ago, I thought everything was great. We've always been close, shared everything, or so I thought, and even started talking about getting engaged. But last weekend, while cleaning up our apartment, I found something that's made me question everything. I was organizing some things in the bedroom and came across an old notebook tucked away in one of their drawers. Inside was a letter, clearly hidden, and when I read it, my stomach dropped. It was written to someone else. The letter was dated just a few months before we met, and it talked about how much they missed this person, how they were the one that got away, and how they couldn't imagine loving anyone else as deeply. The weirdest part? There was no name, just initials. And the way the letter ended, it didn't say goodbye, it sounded like they were still hoping to reconnect. I haven't told my partner I found the letter. I don't even know how to bring it up. Should I confront them? Am I overthinking this? I can't help but feel like there's a huge piece of their past they haven't told me about, and now I'm wondering if I'm just a placeholder for someone else. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Is this something I need to worry about, or am I blowing it out of proportion? I love them, but I can't shake the feeling that they're still holding on to someone else. A little background on this story. My great elderly aunt went to bingo one night with her friend. Her name was Beverly, but she never told me her friend's name due to her traumatic experience with the story and the fate of her friend shortly after. My great aunt was a very spiritual person and even practiced prayer and even taught me how to pray. Even though I'm not religious. One night I asked my great aunt as she was watching me at her house, and I asked if to tell me a scary story. In which today, I'll tell you what she told me. This story was when my great auntie Bev was in a healthier physical state. Therefore, I'll start the story. One day my aunt caught a ride with her friend and they went to the city hall to play some bingo. I like to mention this part because it's important later on in the story. As my great aunt and her friend arrive at the city hall, where the bingo is starting at, they begin to set up their little spot at a table that is a little far away from the entrance but close enough to the middle table. As they started to set up their table to play bingo, my aunt sat face to face with her friend and her back side to the entrance, while her friend had the seat to look at the entrance door and her. My great aunt starts to set up her bingo dabbers, in which her friend points at the entrance and says, "Look." My great aunt turns her head and sees a handsome young man in a suit walk inside the city hall and walk around and letting his presence be known. Keep in mind people are around and see him too. As the man walks around, great aunt notices a tail under his dress pant. Then out of nowhere he knocks on the table with people sitting beside it. Which spoiler she heard later on from people that table kept winning throughout the night. My great aunt tells people about this and how the man is not good and may not be actually a man and may be something else. But the people in the building ignore her and stare at the man with hesitant eyes but also with curiosity. But so on, but great aunt gets a bad feeling from the man and immediately looks away and the only one in the building to do so. Not to mention, but she tells her friend to look away but unfortunately she doesn't. Her friend described that after the man knocked on the table, he walked into the wall and became a shadow and his long tail showed when he became a shadow and left the building from the entrance. My great aunt wanted to leave but her friend didn't, but furthermore my great aunt left and got a ride home, but I'm unsure if her friend left or stayed as Bev never mentioned it. But after weeks after this incident, her friend died in a terrible hit and run near the city hall. It's in the middle of the city or somewhere close enough. But unfortunately they never found out the perpetrator or anything that hit her friend and the case was left unsolved. Scary enough people were around and this was during the day, but with the many eyewitnesses they still couldn't identify the vehicle or person as it was like it vanished. My now deceased great aunt told me this story when I was a kid and described to me she met the devil and he must have taken her friend's soul and cursed anyone that was at that bingo hall. Not trying to say anything, but my deceased great aunt didn't leave this earth easily as well. She almost made it to her 70th birthday. However, I'm not spiritual, but this story of hers makes me really think on what's really out there. My wife. I came back from work. I parked my car and then noticed my wife waiting for me. I got out of the car. Holding hands, we entered the house. She took a seat on the couch. I bought some glasses. My wife grabbed my hand. I was happy. We talked. As she spoke, I was amazed. She knew so many things. We held hands. We kissed. Then, I got a message on my cell phone. It was my wife, telling me she had to stay overtime at work and she'll get home in 3 hours. I got on my feet, and stood there, confused. My wife liked being asked me what was wrong. I made the mistake of telling her about the message I got. At that moment, her eyes turned fully black, with no pupils. She jumped on her feet. I ran. A light bulb exploded. I kept running. She approached me. I hid in the bathroom. I could hear that thing roar and pound on the door. The door handle was moving rapidly. The door was shaking very violently. I squeezed myself through the bathroom window and jumped into the courtyard. I made a run for it to the car. I entered it. My wife appeared with a huge kitchen knife. I backed off and ran her through. I smashed the vehicle into the gate but failed to break it. The monster was approaching. The car didn't move anymore. No more gas. I blocked the car doors. The fake wife began hitting the car while roaring and hissing. I realized I had to stop her before my real wife got home, or else that thing might harm her. I got out of the car. I pushed the monster aside and made a run to the basement, where I held my shotgun. I got there. The enemy arrived. Its body is twisted in inhumane ways. I fired the weapon. Again. The woman crawled backward on the wall and onto the ceiling. I fired my shotgun, but she turned into multiple shadows that began to spread all over the walls. I ran to the house and grabbed a Bible. I began reading from it and praying. Shadows moved across the wall, forming terrible shapes. The lights flickered. The chairs and the table were moving back and forth. The shadows converged into the room to form the same entity that looked like my wife. I kept praying. Suddenly, the entity turned into a giant shadow that flew right through the window. I did it. I was now safe. My real wife arrived. I told her everything. She hugged me. I told her how scared I was and that I was so glad it was all over. "Who said it was over?" asked my wife, then her eyes turned fully black, and she laughed. But not in a way a human ever could. I ran again. Another wife arrived, the real one. The fake one made 2 knives float into her hands. I grabbed the shotgun. My wife grabbed it and told me to lure it to the mirror upstairs. The thing followed me. I was cut by her knives, which she wielded like an ancient warrior. Me and my wife prayed. I fired the weapon, each shot driving her closer to the mirror. The mirror absorbed the entity and my real wife quickly covered it. We hugged. From then on, that mirror will always stay covered. And we try to avoid getting close to it.